Hello everyone, this is Nick and welcome to a little help tutorial video on how to use transports in Axis and Allies 1942 online. Now the game itself is pretty it's pretty easy to manage. It's pretty decent to sort of let's just go ahead and start a campaign really quickly so I can show you different transport moves for all the different nations. But it's pretty easy to use. The user interfaces, you know, it's pretty nice. However, transport usage seems to be sort of the #1 top thing that most people complain about because, let's face it, it's absolutely fucking horrendous. So hopefully I'm just going to show you a couple of easy things to keep in mind when dealing with transports. These things right here. Russia's turn does not include transports because they don't have any. I think they might start with a transport in the classic version of Axis and Allies, but in this 1942 edition they don't. But I think they do in the classic. So let's just go ahead and blaze right through Russia's turn. It's absolutely pointless to... Oh, whoops. Sorry. Right, so here we are at Germany, and they have a transport. Now, the way you want to... Let's just end the phase. I'm not going to be doing any purchases. I'm not actually going to be doing battles. It's really just showing how the transports work, and that's it. See, everything has a very nice, smooth movement, right? A a cruiser can move, and then it can move again to attack. A submarine can do the same. It can move and move to attack. A plane as well, it can, you know, move to attack or what have you. Transport, however, let's just cancel all of that. Transport, however, can move, but then you also have to basically use the transport to pick up things, then move again and offload, etc., etc. And what I find works the best is thinking about it from the perspective of the transport and not the actual unit you're trying to put into the transport. So, you know, if you're playing the 1998 CD-ROM version of Axis and Allies, which is a phenomenally good game, or if you're playing the actual board game, you say, well, I want to load these troops onto the transport. You can't do that here in this 1942 edition. You're not managing the troop, you're managing the transport. So instead of looking at it as, I want to take this unit and load it onto, you have to think about it as the transport is picking up something. So you do everything with the transport selected. And it's just that tiny little perspective shift that kind of helps you wrap your head around how a transport works. So that's the sort of standard, how it works. There are a lot of other things that make it incredibly finicky. It's just horrendous to use, and it takes a lot of time trying to sort of get used to it, because you can just be spending 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes just trying to do a simple transport movement. If you're not used to how they work, it's a pretty steep learning curve. But yeah, so basically you want to take the transport, have the transport selected, then right-click on the units you want to pick up, and then right-click on where you want to offload them. And you'll know that you have done a successful transporting thing when the outcome increases by the number that you're transporting. So for instance, this plane is attacking Karelia, so over here it said 1, right? There. One thing is attacking Karelia. The transport, however, is transporting 2 things into Karelia, so that needs to go up to 3. If the number doesn't match what you're offloading, there's something wrong. You have somewhere along the process, you fucked up. This is a pretty easy example. You know, we're just taking 1 infantry and 1 tank, and we're doing that. So, and we're only dealing with 1 transport. But then we get into situations later on in the game, which hopefully I'll be able to showcase as I just breeze through all these turns, where things are not quite looking right, and you're like, wait, why didn't I pick that up? I'm pretty sure I wanted to pick that thing up, but I didn't. Why is this simple thing you know, transporting 2 infantry. Why is it taking up 2 transports? That does happen, by the way, because we'll get into that later on. But you might use multiple transports to transport just, you know, 2 infantry that you're not trying to do. You just want it to happen with 1 transport, and there's a way to work around that. It's actually a monumental pain in the ass, and I really hope that the developers of this game kind of fine-tune it. I hope they make it better. I really wouldn't mind seeing a complete change of the transport system, because it's really, 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 really bad right now, and you have to fiddle a lot. You have to fiddle around a lot with the whole incoming, outgoing. You have to see what transport you have selected and what it's carrying and why certain things are happening the way they are. It's really, really annoying, but that's a pretty simple move. That's a pretty simple move. We're dealing with 1 transport, 1 infantry unit, 1 tank, and of course, yes, a transport can take 1 infantry and 1 alternate unit, like artillery, right there, artillery, a tank. It cannot take 2 artillery, and it cannot take 2 tanks. It can take 2 infantry, but the best thing to try to do to maximize your combat moves is to take 1 infantry and 1 other unit, like artillery or tank. 1 sort of heavy armor or supporting unit for the infantry. But yeah, that's a pretty basic little thing. And then of course, however many units you are offloading with a transport, you can also bombard with. So if we had a 2nd cruiser here, we'd be able to bombard with 2. If we had a 3rd cruiser, we would not be able to bombard with it, because we are only offloading 2 land units. So it's 1 cruiser or 1 bombardment unit, cruiser or a battleship, for every land unit that you are offloading with a transport. Let's keep that in mind if you did not know that. Anyway, there's really no reason to even bother with anything else with Germany. Let's just go ahead and get all this stuff completely deleted. There we go. Everything's dead. Goodbye, Germany. Russia's doing a great job holding out this turn. And the phase, and let's look at the UK. Now with the UK, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to purchase a whole bunch of transports and put them here, because I want to show sort of multiple transport fuck-uppery and how it can be incredibly annoying. So let's go ahead and get just a whole mix match of things here and put it all here in the UK for next turn. We're not going to see British transports right now, so we're just going to go into the next phase and look at Japan's turn. Japan is similar to the UK in that it deals with a lot of transports. You have a lot of islands around the area. You have to kind of try to deal with India and the little US territories here. Not really too much with Russia, because Russia's kind of a pushover for Germany. They tend to just be a meat bag for all the German forces, so you don't really have to do much with the northeastern Russian provinces. But nonetheless, you do have a lot of stuff to take care of here, especially this US Navy. But we're not really going to be doing any fights, we're just sticking to this transport tutorial. You start with 1 transport in C-Zone 60 off the eastern coast of Japan, and you start with 1 transport in C-Zone 61 off the coast of Shanghai. Now, the British usually want to try to threaten this transport. Again, we're getting into strategy here, so let me just go ahead and ignore everything I've just said. We have a transport, we have a transport. We're going to ignore the purchasing phase and just go to movement. Now, you can, with a transport, what I like to do, one of my favorite moves here, is take this transport in C-Zone 61, bring it down here to the Philippines, pick up the artillery, come back, pick up a unit here from Shanghai, and offload it into Yunnan, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. You know, there are a whole bunch of different combat moves that I do with regards to this little territory, but that's something that you can keep in mind, that's another way transports can work. They can move, pick up, move, offload, because a transport, much like ships, have 2, well, you can't really see it here because this is a combat move, and I guess here, see, this battleship can move 1, 2 and attack this fleet here if it wanted to. All naval units, well, all ships, because technically a fighter in a navy is a naval unit, but all ships have a 2 movement range. So, seeing that one more time, you can select the transport, and remember, you're not moving it here then trying to select the artillery unit, because it doesn't work that way. It's kind of a pain in the ass to wrap your head around, but you're doing everything with the transport. So you're selecting the transport, you're moving it, you're picking it up, You can just click here, the game will know what you're trying to do, so it will automatically move it back into C-Zone 61 and offload it into Yunnan. The same here, you've got this transport which can, you know, either pick up an infantry unit here and this tank, and you do want to be careful when you do something like this, offloading straight into Buryatia, because especially with these like really annoying zones up here, what it tends to want to do is instead of moving into C-Zone 62, well,
get wrecked, scrub.
There it worked perfectly. Okay, there the game fucked me up, but what it tends to try to do a lot of the times is move up here into C-Zone 63 and offload it. So if you're unsure of where a unit might move, you definitely want to try to make every tiny movement you can, step by step. So, you know, moving into the C-Zone you want it to be in, because there are a lot of provinces that are connected to 2 different C-Zones. Sadly and embarrassingly for me, it didn't do what I thought it was going to do, which is move up here to 63 and offload. But, you know, there are some times where that might happen. You might see something like, oh, I'm thinking it's going to come here to offload into Buryatia, but something like this happens, and you might not pick that up in this virtual mode, because all you're really focusing on is, oh, you know, I just want this happening. And then all of a sudden you might have a fleet up here that you didn't really want, especially for Japan, which the transport blitz needs you to be coming down here to C-Zone 36 by next turn, and if they're up here, you can't do that, because they can only get to the Shanghai Sea area, and not the actual Thailand Sea area. So you really want to be careful. Whoops. Accidentally pressed the back button on my mouse. I did not know that that worked in this game. But you really want to be careful with what C-Zone your transport is going into. So again, pick up an infantry, pick up a tank, move into the appropriate C-Zone, then offload. And that way you know where your naval units are and how they are moving. Now, let's just go ahead and pretty much cancel all this. I don't want to be going into any kind of combat here with Japan. And now we're with the US. We'll just go ahead and ignore the US phase as well. And we'll ignore this German turn as well. I really want to show when dealing with multiple transports in multiple different sea zones with multiple different types of units. Right, so we're with England right now. Let's just skip through the purchase phase and into the combat move, which is where you're going to be doing your offloading transport movements. Now, let's say let's ignore all the artillery and the tanks here. Let's say all I have are 2 transports, one of which I eventually want to move with my non-combat move to somewhere else, for example, picking up this tank, ignoring all of this fleet, just ignoring everything. Let's just pretend I have 2 transports here and 2 infantry. So, I select a transport, hopefully just one, and I do this. So I've just picked up 2 infantry. So, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, surely 1 transport can pick up 2 infantry, right? So the game probably did that with 1 transport. No, it did not. It did that with 2 different transports. Each transport picked up 1 infantry, and that can really fuck you up if you're planning to do something with that 2nd transport in your non-combat move. So, as you can see here, we have 2 transports, this number right here at the bottom right of this little icon. We have 2 transports with 1 infantry unit on it. And you might not want to do that, so you have to be very, very careful with what transport is picking up what. Now here, clearly, this is just an example. You know, we've got artillery, there's no reason to just take a transport with 2 infantry, but you have to be careful. If that's something you are doing in future matches, you have to be careful that you're not fucking this up and you're not screwing over one of your non-combat moves. So all of a sudden, you know, or maybe even worse, you picked up 2 infantry units and you just did like this because you thought you were offloading 2 infantry, and now you're not. You have 1 transport with an infantry unit in it and only 1 landing in France. Again, horrible examples. But the way to try to avoid this is to select the transport, pick up an infantry, select, deselect, reselect the transport, and do that, and pick up the infantry again. And now you ensure that you just have one transport doing what you want to do. I've actually never noticed that if you have it selected from here, does it work? No, see, it still does it. It's absolutely horrendous transport controls. It's just really bad. You know, you have to, again, it used 2 transports. So you have to select the transport, load the infantry, deselect the transport, or at least go into the C zone area, deselect, reselect the one that just has 1 infantry unit on it, and okay, see, now the whole game is just taking a shit and dying. It doesn't know what I want it to do. There we go. There we go. I had to deselect and do that again just to load a 2nd infantry on there because it wasn't accepting the right click when I was hitting the infantry unit. So again, this game is great. This game is phenomenal. It's a lot of fun, but the transport usage is so fucking bad, and I really just hope that they fix it. I really hope they fix it. Once you get used to it, you know what you're doing, it's fine. But I'm only assuming that for new people trying to get into the game, and you know, the first time they use transport, they probably just give up. They're probably just like, fuck this. This is horrendous. I don't want to play this anymore. Because you can really mess up a lot of turns without knowing what you did. But anyway, this was an example. Let's cancel that. We're looking at working with 4 different transports, or sorry, 5 actually, because we do have 3 here. So again, if we want to make a move, sort of like bringing this transport over here to attack France, we've already seen this. It's like a classroom. It's like I'm the teacher, you're the classroom. We're just gonna do it again. Another example. Learn through repetition. Pick up the tank, move, pick up an infantry, offload. Do all that with 1 transport. And because you had this transport selected, it's not picking up that 1 infantry on England with 1 of these. You would have to select these transports. Oh, and in case you're wondering, an empty transport and a transport with something on it will have different icons in a C zone. One will just be empty like that, and one will be... Here, let's cancel this incoming move. One will have... Well, I don't know why it... Yeah, that's another thing. Here, all I did was cancel the incoming move into C Zone 8, but instead of just canceling the move, it sent the tank back to Eastern Canada. Again, there are a lot of things in this game regarding transports, right? Everything else is fine, but regarding transports, specifically and only transports, there are just so many things that I personally feel have been implemented horribly. It's just so bad. I never told it to, like, cancel the load thing. I just wanted to cancel the movement into C Zone 8, but the game said, okay, let's cancel fucking everything you did. For that, I would have, I guess, selected the I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. But anyway, pick up the tank, move, take, offload. Right, now, let's say that I am not doing this, that I'm not doing a combat move here, and I have done my combat already, and I've got, let's say, 2 transports, or let's say all these 3 transports, wanting to take all these units somewhere else. It doesn't matter where, I'm just taking them somewhere else. This is just an example. So I would select these 3 transports, and let's say I want to take 2 infantry, let's just say everything. We're taking everything, right? We're taking 3 infantry, 2 artillery, and 1 tank, and we're putting them into Africa, down here, right? Now, I've just done Well, that's another thing I guess I haven't really mentioned. You can do multiple transport usages if they're in a stack. So you don't necessarily have to do one transport at a time. You can do that, but it's better just to, you know, select, and this is why it's a little bit finicky when you're trying to pick up multiple infantry, because it knows that you probably, or it assumes you probably want to put supporting units in as well. So you can do like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's fine, because the game assumes that what you're trying to do is pick up supporting units. So it'll have 3 different transports with 1 infantry on it, and that's why it can mess up your 1 transport with 2 infantry movement. Right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If I don't necessarily want to offload them into, in this example, French West Africa, and I just want them to be here in a C zone, then I cannot spam right-click. It does 1 transport at a time. So right now it just said, well, this transport wants to come to this C zone, because it assumes, the game assumes that you still want to offload it. That's why this is highlighted. So you cannot rapidly move 3 transport. You have to deselect, reselect. Actually, no, that doesn't even work. You have to specifically go into, yeah, here, C Zone 8. You have to, in this little panel, select a transport, right-click, select the other transport, right-click. I want to, just explaining this makes me want to put a bullet in my fucking mouth. I mean, it's atrocious. It's so bad. There is a thing we can do here, however, to save ourselves a little bit of sanity, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can just shift right-click, and that takes all your transports into a very specific area. But again, if you're not used to that, if you're not used to the shift right-click, and you're trying to move 1 at a time, and you notice that they won't budge, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Why? And you're clicking here, and again, I clicked my mouse button, and you're kind of clicking all over the place, and you're fucking up all your transport movements, and you're accidentally offloading and canceling things, and then you're just like, I don't fucking understand everything. I'd quit. Again, that's just for rage quitters. That's not for nice, calm people like me. But it can get incredibly frustrating. It really can. So I would say that if you're doing a long movement thing with multiple transports, I would highly recommend you start incorporating the shift key into your movements. There you go. See, now you just offload everything into one place, or if we don't want to offload them into one place, you can just shift right click into a C zone, and you've moved 3 transports with 6 units, which is why this is 9. It's counting the transports as well. So 3 and 6 is 9. Math is fun. That's pretty much the gist of transports. I don't really think there's anything else. But, you know, looking at what a transport has in this panel, shortcut is E by default. You can open up this little panel by E. I forget what the panel itself is called. But open up the panel, you know, look at outgoing, look at incoming, take your time, slowly learn what things are doing. Understanding the icons is paramount, you know, knowing that this transport is only 1 transport here by this, noted by this circle, yellow circle with the number 1 in it. It's only 1 transport. 1 transport has 1 infantry unit and 1 tank, and it has 0 moves remaining. And then 2 transports, apart from this one, you have 2 transports that each have 1 infantry and 1 artillery, and they have 0 moves remaining. It's just slowly getting used to understanding what all the icons mean. So, you know, if you have something that's like this and you're like, wait, what, this looks different, I'm supposed to be transporting something else. Oh, it looks like this transport carrying the tank left an infantry unit behind. So you cancel just that 1 transport, you pick up the infantry unit, you pick up the tank, you move it down here, right? And then you can, since we only had that one transport selected from doing that, you know, if you accidentally do that, then you move that down, then you offload into French West Africa. Again, make sure, is every unit here that you want to move in your non-combat move? No, clearly not. Or maybe not. Maybe you want to keep, you know, 4 units here, but there are only 2 that are offloading into French West Africa. And again, you don't have the icons in the combat phase and the non-combat phase. You just have numbers and little indicators as to what they are. Yellow is land, blue is naval, and red is air. Well, there's nothing I'm doing with an air unit. So, you know, make sure, open up the C panel, open up incoming, select your transports. Well, not that one because that's the tank one. Select your transports, offload them. There you go. Now you have the appropriate units you possibly wanted to offload in your non-combat move. Now you have them all there for, you know, potentially some kind of appropriate defense or whatever you want. But it's getting used to how the transports move. And yes, here it does still say incoming transports with things, and that can be a little confusing. You're like, wait, why are these things still on the transports? They're not, because it says that you're performing an offloading naval action with that little anchor, right? If it didn't have the anchor, or if you weren't doing that move, better said. Why is it now? Because I didn't pick up... did I load the infantry unit, then offload it back into... Yes, I did. Yes, I did. That's how bad transport usages and clicking on things are. Right, cancel that one again. Pick up infantry and the tank and bring it here. See, so now we go into this panel and you can see that this does not have a little anchor icon, so we are not performing an amphibious landing, right? Those are staying on the transport. So if you don't have the transport selected, you want to select it, offload it into French West Africa or wherever you're doing. Again, it's slowly taking your time and meticulously checking every little thing, every little movement, every pickup and offload, every number that you need in the correct place when dealing with transports. It's abysmal. It's really, really bad. So you really have to take a lot of time, have a lot of patience, have a lot of hopefully observational skills, make sure you're doing what you're doing, make sure you're moving into the correct C zone like we saw up here. You know, you don't want a half or an isolated transport accidentally in the incorrect C zone that's just easy pickings for a fighter or a submarine or whatever. You don't want that to happen, because if you've played this game even the tiniest little amount, you've probably already figured out that the name of the game is basically just IPCs and production. It's having units on the board, it's having your IPCs, your industrial production certificates, it's having them count for something on the map. You know, there are a lot of times when just a lone transporting something and, you know, being open for easy pickings, maybe that is a good strategic decision, but if it's not something you wanted to do and you just lose a transport or two for absolutely no reason, then you're behind. You're behind, and you're going to get taken advantage of in that aspect from your enemies, so you really need to be careful with that. You know, one of the very common moves, at least in the AI likes to do this move, and I think some players like to do this move as well, is just take these 2 transports and bring them down here and offload into Africa, and then you have all the German Air Force to deal with. You've got this German battleship to deal with. I mean, it's just a waste of 2 transports. You know, you need to make sure they're defended. Do you bring the destroyer down? Do you wait a turn and maybe get another cruiser and destroyer, a couple of subs to defend the transports? You know, it's how you deal with your transport usage and your IPC usage. So I would honestly say that one of the most important aspects to look into in this game, especially if you're a heavy naval power, is paying very close attention to your transport usage. You know, if you're Russia and you're never going to build a transport in the entire game, and you're probably going to die by round 3 or 4, you don't care. That's not an issue for you. But for pretty much everything else, you know, Germany in the mid to late game wants transports to try to take England. Japan is basically probably the primary transport power, especially early game. The US is a transport power, you know, early to mid game as well, because there's nothing you can do here. You need to start offloading troops somewhere. Maybe you want to build up a navy first to take on Japan, maybe you want to build up a navy first to kind of secure the Atlantic, but eventually you're going to be playing with transports, and you really, really need to know how to properly use them. But anyway, I think most of this has just been rambling, especially towards the end. It's really just a lot of rambling and ranting, but hopefully you enjoyed the video, hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. It's a great little game. If you don't have it, pick it up. If you do have it, great. Good for you. But either way, this has been Nick with a little transport tutorial in Axis and Allies 1942 Online. Hope you enjoyed it once again. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.